Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another movie review. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, so I apologize if this one's a little rusty, but I am here to talk about a little movie called The Tax Collector, which is a new film written and directed by David Ayer, of course, who's directed many films in the past, many films that are very similar to this one. Some truly great movies. End of Watch, I loved. I really liked that movie. He wrote Training Day. He didn't direct it, but I love that movie. He directed Suicide Squad. Everybody knows that. Bright, which is bad but very entertaining. Honestly, I find pretty much every David Ayer movie, even if they're bad, to be at least entertaining. Is that the same with The Tax Collector, which has been getting savaged completely by reviewers? Most of them calling it offensive and just completely bereft of like anything that you would consider like quality. I've read reviews where people have just dogpiled it completely without giving it an ounce of positive reception. It's a movie that I was very excited about, mainly because I like David Ayer and also because of all the negative reviews. Whenever I hear a video game or a movie is universally panned, I get more excited to watch it, even though while I'm watching it most of the time I'm not digging it. It's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, the emoji movie's that bad? I gotta watch it now. I gotta see it. Like if it was like a 5 out of 10, then I'd be like, eh. But it's a 0, it's a 1, it's a 2. I gotta see it now. I'm just curious, and this one has been getting just completely just demolished, and I can agree with a lot of the points about this movie. I can assure you that people are not wrong when they say this movie is terrible. It is terrible, but I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't have a good time with this movie. This movie is trash. It's not only poorly written, for sure. I think it might be his worst written movie. I don't know if he wrote Suicide Squad. I'm not too sure about that. He might have. I'm not too sure. He at least co-wrote it. Just some of the dialogue, especially between some of the more gangster characters in that movie, felt like some David Ayer writing. That's for sure. But like even like stuff like Sabotage with Arnold Schwarzenegger. If anybody remembers that movie was terribly written. But this might be his worst written movie. It is so devoid of anything that I would say is quality writing. It is atrocious, but because it's so bad, it ended up being a little bit more fun just to watch it and just like, oh my god, they're foreshadowing the shit out of it. Like characters will literally say like, oh, make sure this doesn't happen, and then literally 1 minute later, that would be incredible. 1 minute later, that thing they said, make sure that doesn't happen, happens. And it's like, it's so poorly written. The dialogue, just the screen, just the writing in general, all of it is bad, is really bad. Most of the performances aren't very good in this movie. Maybe I should talk about what the story is about. Again, this is going to be a very rough review. I just got done watching the movie. I needed to talk about it. This is a movie about, it has a almost decent premise. It's about a couple of tax collectors, which are really just two guys that collect taxes for a local gangster lord, a gang lord or whatever. So they go around each of these like lower gangs and just collect like insurance, I guess, taxes. And that's really the premise, except, of course, that's not going to be the whole movie. A little bit later in the movie, of course, someone shows up who's a bigger threat, and then our main guy, played by Bobby Soto, David, he's a family man also, and a tax collector, and he has to deal with this new guy that shows up, and there's a lot of death and dramatic stuff that happens. Shia LaBeouf's there. He's his right-hand man, Bobby Soto's character, David. His name is Creeper, by the way. We'll get into him more when we talk more about the positives. I assure you that. But yeah, the movie itself is very, very poorly written. It is. But because it's so poorly written, it's just like one of those things where it's like, all right, there's a lot of obvious dialogue, some terrible dialogue where it's like trying to be offensive, and it's like so obvious it's trying to be offensive, it ends up just being hilarious and kind of embarrassing. in a fun way, embarrassing in a fun way. Even a little cringe here and there. But as you would expect from a David Ayer movie, this movie has pretty much no likable characters. Like, nobody is supposed to be really likable besides our main guy, David, who is still a gangster. He still collects these taxes and hurts people, but he's supposed to be our more likable character. And I guess I could see that. Problem is that most of the acting here, besides for Shia LaBeouf, is pretty weak. You don't have too many like big name actors here. You got Shia LaBeouf, like I said. George Lopez has a small role in here, and he's kind of like, when he showed up, I was like, all right, George Lopez acting kind of like a gangster. I don't know. At first, I didn't even recognize him, to be fair to him. I was like, oh, that's George Lopez, like 2 minutes after they introduced him. I'm like, oh, wow. That's also because I haven't seen him in a very long time, to be fair. But he's not terrible. But, like, nobody's great in this movie, especially our main guy, Bobby Soto, who I think is pretty bland in this. I don't think he does really... He doesn't do a lot of the emotional aspects, or more of the him being stressed, or him being scared. He doesn't do any of the emotions right. I don't think he does them terribly. I don't think he's a bad actor, but he's supposed to be, like, in the beginning of this movie at least, really like scary. Like, oh man, he shows up with Creeper, who Shia LaBeouf does a great job of looking menacing, but when he shows up and everybody's like, oh no, it's that guy, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really feel it, especially when he starts talking. He has like this kind of more of a high pitched voice. So he's just like, he's trying to look tense. He's like, hey, where's my money? You know, it's just like, he doesn't have that type of, I shouldn't say that. He's a fine actor. He seems like a nice guy too. I shouldn't talk about him. But I didn't think he was great in the movie. And of course it's David Ayer, so that means everybody that is a Latino is a thug or a gang member. You know, there's like, I don't think any real characters in this movie that are not gang members, and if they aren't, they're either kids or old people. That's even George Lopez though is a gang member in this movie. So yeah, when I say old people, I mean like background old people. Like, oh yeah, there's the mom of this character. I think she might not be a gang member. I'm not too sure. In David Ayer's universe, everybody's a gang member. Either that or they're, like I said, kids or old people. Even though the kids are just like going to be gang members soon. I'm sure. In David Ayer's universe, everybody's going to be either a gang member or a gang member in training. So of course that's a negative right there, because I can already tell you right here, there's a lot of people that have a problem with this movie because it has so little when it comes to likable Latino characters, and the movie, besides for Shia LaBeouf, is predominantly Latino, and none of the characters are like role models at all. There's like one character that you can say it might be like supposed to be kind of not likable, but not a role model, and that's David's wife in the movie. But besides that, like, nobody is even a decent human in this movie. Like, David has moments, I guess, but he's still a bad person. It's not, screw around, he's a bad person. So that's definitely problematic, sure. But it didn't really bother me too much. I know a lot of people go, well, it's because you're white. That's true. That's true. Maybe that's why. But also, I know what to expect from David Ayer because I've seen every one of his movies, and that's how he rolls when it comes to his movies. Same thing with Suicide Squad. I mean, you have a character in there, I forgot his name, the fire guy, that's, he's a gang member, and he did some bad things, and he has tattoos everywhere. By the way, we'll talk about Shia LaBeouf and his tattoo in a minute. Just a couple other negatives, like the editing in the movie is not very good. Like, it is very sloppy and very jarring at times. Like, there would be times where people are doing something and they'll immediately jump to them doing something else, and that could work for another movie, say a movie that is more about the pacing being really quick. This movie, the pacing is pretty quick, but for the most part it's still a regular gangster movie. It's not like a fast-paced like action film, you know what I mean? So it could work in a movie like the one I explained, but not really in this movie. The pacing is, I mean, not the pacing, the editing is very sloppy. It's very just like quick cuts, and like there's even like times where the scene ends on like a sound effect, and it's like it like stops midway through the sound effect or something, and it just felt very jarring. And I gotta say this, the story itself is generic and very, very lousy, I will say, and you know exactly where it's going. And the movie has countless moments of foreshadowing and flashbacks And the flashbacks are some of the worst I've seen in a movie. It's literally flashbacks to scenes that happened earlier in the movie for no reason, just to say, oh, this character did this earlier, that's why he can prevail in this scene. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I saw that scene 20 minutes ago. You don't need to show me now to make me understand why he prevailed. I understand he did that thing earlier in the movie, and that's why he can do this now. You know what I mean? There's like so many flashbacks where it's just like, yeah, remember that? I'm like, yeah. And it's just like foreshadows to those scenes are just there, not foreshadow, I'm sorry, flashbacks to fill in the big holes in the plot of just where there's like no dialogue, just to like add emotional value, you know what I mean? So it's just like, oh, they'll show a flashback of somebody to make this character feel more like, you know, I need to get revenge or whatever, you know, it's stuff like that. It's really lazy. But the movie itself is 90 minutes long, and it does have some positives. Okay, even though it's not like the fastest paced movie, like I said, but the pace is fast. I mean, it's 90 minutes, it gets to the point pretty quickly, and the movie itself is so over the top and ridiculous that you can't help but enjoy it. There is a bad, I guess the bad guy, even though everybody's a bad guy in this movie, the new bad guy, a guy that's trying to run in to LA and try to become the new king or whatever of whatever, you know, the gang stuff, drugs and shit. I'm sure. And that guy Corneo, his name is so, every time he shows up, he is so fucking over the top. I loved him. I really did. He's not very good in the movie. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he tries, but his character is so thinly written. He's just the guy that shows up and says like evil shit, and he's smoking a cigar, and he's so evil. Every time he showed up, though, I had a great time. I'll give him that. And also, I gotta give big props to Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf is actually legitimately great in this movie. I will say this, though. I wanted to talk about the tattoo. If you don't know what I mean when I said the tattoo earlier, Shia LaBeouf actually got a tattoo for this movie. He got a giant tattoo. I don't know what the tattoo was of, because you barely see it in the movie. And if you did, maybe I just didn't notice it. Like, I was too enthralled in the plot, and I wasn't looking at his tattoo. But he got a giant tattoo for this movie, and you barely see it. You barely see that tattoo. So I don't know why Shia LaBeouf really did that. Maybe there's more scenes in the editing bay, or maybe there was moments where you do see, I just don't remember or wasn't really paying attention that much. But yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, you see it once at one point, and it's like shaky footage too. So it's like, I'm like looking, I'm like, wait, let me see. And you barely see it. So I'm like, oh, Shia LaBeouf is really committed. I mean, this is the same guy that had real sex on camera. Got really drunk for a movie, like actual drunk. What did he do for Fury? Didn't he get like one of his teeth removed or whatever? I mean, this guy, hey, I mean, I love Shia LaBeouf. I really do. I think he's great. Maybe you should just start acting a little bit more besides just doing like gimmicks. You know, I mean, you're a great actor. Just do acting. You don't need to get the tattoo and, you know, you're not Christian Bale, where Christian Bale loses weight, gains weight, loses weight, gains weight in the fraction of like a day or so. I don't even know how Christian Bale does it. He's insane. You're just a great actor. You don't need to keep doing like gimmicks like, I removed my tooth, I had real sex, I tattooed my whole body. You don't need to do that, especially not for this movie. Like the tooth thing, like, you know, you could probably get replaced. Like the tattoo, there was a giant tattoo for this movie. For this, Fury was great. So I understand that one. This, and that's David Ayer also, I should mention. Shit, I actually forgot to mention that. That was a great film, actually. And that was probably his least when it comes to gangstery movies. I wish he did more movies like that, because that might actually be his best movie, even though I loved End of Watch. But yeah, I love Fury. That was a great film. Go check it out. I actually forgot that was David Ayer. Just thinking about it, I was like, oh, that was David Ayer, of course. And also, the movie is extremely violent. So if you really like violence in your movie, this movie is super violent. You'll see decapitated heads. You'll see crushed faces. You'll see people getting shot in the face. You'll see a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood in this movie. And like I said, even though the movie itself is not good, it is fun mainly because it's so over the top and so terrible when it comes to its writing that I just had a good time. It's a bad movie. It is bad. But it's not a complete waste of time. If you're watching this with some friends, you can either make fun of it or just laugh at it. I recommend it. It's bad. It is bad. And it's offensive, for sure. But it's terrible, and it will be one of those movies where I don't think it will, like, I don't think it will like. I mean, it's offensive, and there's no real good role models in it. But I don't think it's gonna be a movie that stays in the mindset of people for too long. So it's gonna be one of those offensive movies that is forgotten about. So really, if people are offended that much about it, I don't think it's gonna be that big of a problem, unless this movie really, really, really becomes popular. I know it was the #1 movie in America, but every new big-ish movie that comes out nowadays on demand becomes the #1 movie. So I'm sure next week when Unhinged comes out, I'm sure that'll be #1. Even though I think that's coming to theaters too, so that's a little weird. But anyway, there go. That is The Tax Collector. Shia LaBeouf was good. The pace is fast. I'll give it that. It's very violent, and it's so bad it's good at times. Even though it's very offensive, the editing is very jarring and sloppy, and the foreshadowing and the flashbacks are really, really, really amateurish. I still kind of enjoyed it. I don't know. I didn't have a bad time. Yeah. That's my opinion. That's went on way too long. The Tax Collector is bad. I don't really recommend it unless you're like me. And if you're like me, you'll probably like it. So maybe I'll recommend it to people like me. But I hope you're not like me. Nobody should be like me. Anyway, there you go. That is my review for The Tax Collector. That was a loud noise. I hope you enjoyed it. And it sure is a ride. Yeah. You know what? Actually, I want to get into spoilers real quick. Just real quick. So spoilers from here on out. I'll put a timestamp in the comments. But I do want to talk about one thing in this movie. I found it really weird that about an hour into the movie... This is spoilers, by the way. I'm not kidding. Spoilers from here on out. I am spoiling it. Spoilers. I found it really weird that the movie banks on Shia LaBeouf as a big actor in the movie. It's definitely the biggest actor in the movie is Shia LaBeouf. I guess you could argue George Lopez, but hey, I'll talk about George Lopez in a minute. Cursed image coming up. But Shia LaBeouf's character gets killed an hour into the movie. Now the movie's only like 95 minutes, so I mean, it's a big chunk of the way in the movie. But he's not the main character, so he is not the main character. They sell him the movie like he's like one of the big features, and he dies an hour in, and he dies in a way where I'm like, okay, I guess it was supposed to be emotional. He's definitely the best character in the movie. Not that he's a good person, but he's still a likable enough character where you want to see more of him, mainly because Shia LaBeouf's so good. But it's weird that they kill him because later on in the movie, him and some other guy that we barely met earlier in the movie go to the cornea guy to take him down. And they're like kind of like a buddy team. And it felt like in the script, Creeper, Shia LaBeouf's character, was supposed to be that character. But for some reason, David Ayer was just like, no, we got to kill Shia now. Like an hour in. And then later on, we'll bring this guy that we met for maybe 30 seconds earlier on in the film to be the guy that shows up with David's character, Bobby Soto. Is it Soto or Soto? I don't know. I'm gonna say Soto. Bobby. I'll call him Bobby. Bobby's character, David. I could just call him David too. So it's a little weird that, like, I don't know, like I get the point, but like that character was barely in the movie, and then he shows up and he's just like, hey man, I'm gonna help you, man, because we're friends or something. Like, hey, I'm going to definitely help you because whatever. But like, it would have made more sense if that was Creeper, but I get that they wanted to have an emotional scene. But there was already an emotional scene like right after that with the wife being killed. Spoilers. So it's just like, and also you have George Lopez's character who's the uncle of David who gets killed. So you already had like 3 emotional like family death moments, I guess, even though Creeper's not, family, but whatever. That I don't think he needed 3. 2 would have been fine. It would have been perfect, and then Creeper could have showed up and helped him. And if you want to kill Creeper at the end, that's fine. But it just didn't make any sense that they dug this one guy up that was earlier in the movie just to show up, just to be the Creeper for that moment. And also, that was another thing. Shia LaBeouf didn't do anything in this movie, really. I mean, he was cool. He was fun to watch. But they kept talking about how he's like the Grim Reaper, man. He's scary. And sure, he's whenever he's like standing right there looking tense, he does look scary, but he doesn't do anything scary. You see like a flashback of him like kind of doing scary shit here and there, but for the most part, he barely does anything. And that also left me disappointed. I was like, I want to see him fuck people up. what happens is that he gets killed by, like, he's naked, getting killed, getting his legs smashed in with a hammer, and then Corneo's character just comes up and just like curb stomps him, and I'm just like, oh, all right, I guess he wasn't shit. But anyway, George Lopez in this movie gets decapitated. We don't see it. We just see the head after. And the, you know what? I feel like I want to add that right here or so. You know what? You know what? I'm going to pause real quick. All right. So everybody knows George Lopez. He's a funny guy. Yeah, everybody knows George Lopez Tonight, all that stuff. He's probably a big part of people's childhood, actually. I would assume. Not mine personally, but, yeah. Cursed Image. There you go. Get that out of your freaking head. That's right. Speaking of head, here's George Lopez's head in a cooler. When I saw this, I was like, Cursed Image. It doesn't even look like George Lopez, to be fair. It's a pretty terrible fake head, but it looks more like bloated Sylvester Stallone. But whatever. But anyway, there you go. There's your Cursed Image. George Lopez's head in a cooler. Never thought I'd see it. Anyway, that's my review. I didn't really give the movie a score, but that's fine. Scores aren't needed. I just told you what I thought. I guess if I had to give it a score, I'm not going to. Anyway, there you go. No, I will. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. There you go. That's my score. So anyway, there you go. Bye.